Hi guys, this is Janice, and this is a video about how I color with adjustment layers on Photoshop. I'll mostly be going over some processes I use to bring things from black and white to color, but I'll touch a bit on how I use adjustments on colored images too. So right now I'm using Photoshop CS5, and I'll stick a link to my FAQ in the description if anyone wants to like check out the other stuff I'm using. Yeah, so this is recorded in real time, and I'm just gonna apologize in advance for any verbal typos I make. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, black and white to color. With the black and white to color process, I think the really key thing is having value variation in your image, because basically what happens is the colors that are generated from the adjustment layers are going to be based on like the different values in your image. So like if you basically, if it looks good or if it looks okay in black and white, it'll be more likely to also look okay when you use adjustment layers to give it color. But if everything's like looking like really like even or like flat or like unreadable even in black and white, like adjustment layers might not be able to fix it, or it probably won't be able to fix it. So yeah, here I have a character, like a drawing that's like already like prepped and like shaded and stuff, but I'll just like quickly go over how I would prep something for coloring from black and white with adjustment layers. So I have a line art here, and basically the first thing I'll do is I'll set up a base color, like base layer of gray. But instead of coloring it in like manually like this, when I'm filling large shapes in general, I like to just select, like make a selection and then fill it. So what I'll do is I'll select the negative space. There's this tiny triangle. It's too tiny. And then I will reverse that selection using Control-Shift-I, and I'll fill it with the fill bucket tool. So the shortcut for that is G. Yeah, so you'll notice what happens here, like that this little bit is not filled in, and basically what happened is like there's just like a little gap in the line art. So when there's gaps in the line art, like all I do is I just like fill it in a little bit and then make my selection, and then it's all good. So yeah, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but the selection tool is like the wand tool. The shortcut for that is W, and when I make selections like this, I make sure to keep the sample all layers on, because if it's off, it's just gonna select the background without reading the line art. So yeah, selection is made, Control-Shift-I, fill a bucket, and I'll touch this up, and then I have the fill. And then the next thing I'll do is I'll just like make a layer on top, or some layers on top, make them into clipping masks. So you can do that either by holding Option and clicking like the line in between layers, or like right clicking and clicking create clipping mask. And basically what that does is it clips layers on top onto layers that are underneath it. So I do this so I don't have to like try really hard to stay within the lines like every time I like put down like a new shade of gray. So let's fast forward to a finished like black and white version of the picture. I went in and like did some fancier things with this. Like I added a little bit of shading, and then I colored the line art, or I shaded the line art. But this, I'm gonna try to focus this video mostly on how I use adjustment layers. So let's let's move on to gradient maps. So gradient, I really like gradient maps for quickly like generating limited palettes. So you can find those, you can make a gradient map by just going to this little circle thing and then clicking this. And basically how it works is like you just go here. This is like an adjustments panel. You just go here and this will come up. And basically like you got this bar, and like what this bar represents is like the range of values on your picture. So all over here you have white or like and like lighter values, and over here you have black and like darker values. So if I go through like the presets like this, for example, like this one, all the white has become orange, and then all like the darker stuff has become like this purple color. Or if I go here, the mid-range values are now all red, and then the darker colors are all like bluish, and then the white is all yellow. So let's pick our own colors. I mostly just feel this out, but like generally, if you contrast something cool with something dark and like something saturated with something desaturated, it works out. And also, anal locus colors like blend more easily with each other. But yeah, other than that, I just feel it out. This isn't a color theory video. I'm sorry. But yeah, like I'm gonna try for maybe cool light and then cool dark, and then watch this, kids. Warm middle looks rad. Let's make her I'm trying to decide between orange and pinkish. Let's go pinkish. Like that. So she's all gradient mapped out. And then the other thing I like to do is I actually like to mask the gradient map to the character. So like normally I would do this like when I make the adjustment layer, but I didn't. But like basically what I do like to make a selection, if I don't have like existing selections. I do have existing selections, but for your sake I'll show you how I make selections. Like basically I'll hold control and then I'll click the layer and it basically selects everything on the layer. I'll hold shift so I can like make an additional selection. I'll click the fill and now everything is selected, and then now I'll just apply that to the mask. So let's invert that selection and clear it, and now everything is like masked to the girl. So what this allows me to do is it allows me to pick colors of the background like separately from the characters. So that way like I can like pick something that makes her like pop out more. So I got a gradient thing going on. Let's add a color to it. Let's add this to heart light. And bam. And I'll just jiggle this around. Oh, also, by the way, I pulled this up using Control U. Or like if you like to do a lot of steps, you can go to Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation, which is Control U. And let's jiggle that. So like compared to if I didn't use the mask, if I didn't use the mask, like I wouldn't be able to like edit the background separately. but with the mask I can, and then that way I can design a palette that makes like that contrasts the character so she pops out more. And then something I can do to make her pop out even more is I can add accent colors to like the character. So like I've already prepped like a color selection, but like real quick, basically how I did this is I turned off the line art layer, and then I went in and just with the wand tool set to sample all layers, I just went in holding shift and like selected stuff. No shit, Sherlock. Yeah. So yeah, something like that. Let's fast forward. The selection is made, and basically looks like that. And I'll just set this to hard light so the stuff underneath shows through. Oh, it's on white, so you can't tell, but let's make this pink. Yeah, so normal is just opaque, but then what hard light does, it's like it's a blending mode layer. So like the colors work differently. How do I explain this? Yeah, but I use hard light because I like the way like it keeps the hue of the color, but also like lets the details and like the values underneath like show through. So let's just jiggle that around a bit. And there we go. It looks like it's almost like I didn't color this in 2.5 seconds. Let's make the blue brighter. And my file has crashed several times while I was recording past versions of this, so let's save. But yeah, like with gradient maps, I find it's like as far as like limited palettes go, I think like you have like the widest like range of like options with them. They're like fairly easy to play around with, but like as you may have observed, like it does require some like manual color picking. And if that's something you're not like super comfortable with, there you can also use a hue saturation layer to like get to like do something super similar. So like basically how that works is like let's make a selection, and then go here, hue saturation. And basically like what it's supposed to do is it is like the hue and saturation of like the colors of an image. But you'll notice that like there are no hues or like saturation on this like black and white girl. So all you need to do is you click colorize and then there's colors. So let's just jiggle this around a bit. What color was the last one? Okay, let's make her pinkish. Wait, was she already pinkish? Okay, like warm pink. Let's make her let's just make her super warm. Orange. And then like with hue saturation adjustments, like what you'll notice is like the colors you get end up being like pretty like monochromatic, whereas like compared to gradient map layer, like if you remember like the bar, if you want like cooler darks, you can do that, or if you want like cooler lights and then warm middles and then cool darks, like you can do that. But then with hue saturation, like it's just like one thing. So something you can do to like to resolve that is you can like pull up like a curves or selective color layer and then like make edits from there. So for this one, I'm just gonna quickly pull up a selective color layer and then do that. I'll explain how I use these next, but let's just quickly jiggle things. Yeah, I think this is fine. It's a pretty slight edit, but I feel like it gives the colors a bit more depth. And then let's do the thing with a thing. Accent colors. Set this to highlight first. And then the background layer. Oh shit, I always forget to mask stuff off. And there's that. So it's, yeah, so as I said before, it's not quite as flexible as gradient maps, but like at the same time, you don't have to think as much about like color theory, in my opinion. Like you just pick a color and then jiggle these around a bit, and then you do the accent colors and stuff. But then, yeah, the two other adjustment layers I use, or like that I like to use to generate palettes, are curves and selective color layers. So I'll start with curves. Basically, how curves works is you got this thing, and what it does is it adjusts the levels of like RGB in RGB channels. So basically what that means is like RGB stands for red, green, and blue. And like, can I explain this? Yeah, it adjusts the amount of red, green, and blue like in the values of an image. So let's start with like RGB together. Like when you have it all together, it basically just like adjusts the overall value. So let's say I want to make the lighter values like even lighter, then I'll just like take this end, like this end like represents like the light values and this end represents the like the dark values. So if I want to make the light values lighter, I can just take this end and like and just like move it up. Or like if I want to make the dark stuff darker, and I would like make a point here and then drag it down. And so that's for RGB. So what you can do is you can switch to different channels. So let's say there's like red, green, and blue. So let's say red. And let's say I want to make the lighter values more red. Then I'll just like move this up. And like maybe the darker values more blue. So I'll move this down. So like this kind of, like if you wanna, how should I say this? Yeah, basically, if you kind of know how RGB interacts with each other, it kind of helps with the way you edit stuff. So for example, let's clear this. If I want to make this yellower, I would go to blue and like move down, like move the blue channel down, because how RGB works is like red and green make yellow. So if there's less blue, there's more red and green, so the thing looks yellower. And like a bunch of other stuff. So let's just go ahead and make a palette. You can get some pretty Instagram-y looking stuff. Let's do blue. Oh, I forgot to mask it again. Blue, and then this is, I feel like this doesn't really need an accent color. So let's just add a background color. There we go, that looks fine. And yeah, so curves, like, yeah, like especially compared to like gradient maps, it's like, it's, to me it feels like a lot more limited in terms of like the range of palettes that you can come up with. Like just because like you're limited to editing like only these channels, but like at the same time, like if you don't want to like go out of your way to like manually pick stuff, like you can come up with some colors like pretty quick, like just like this. So selective colors is kind of a similar deal. The way it looks is kind of different. Let's pull one up. Oh, let's make a selection first. Let's pull it and then pull it up. And it basically looks like this. And what it does is it adjusts the levels of CMYK in an image. So there's no hue here. So we'll be using just these ones. So the whites, neutrals, and blacks. And I find selective color to be like really nice for like editing the temperature of an image. So for example, if I want to make this warmer, then I can just like turn up the yellow, turn down the cyan, maybe turn up the magenta yellow, the magenta a little bit, and make the whites yellower, like that. Or let's say I want to make it cooler, then I would just like turn down the yellow, turn up the cyan, turn down the magenta, stuff like that. It's like super easy to edit like hue and like color temperature. Whereas curves is better for editing value. If I were to like edit like the value contrast here, it's like I really don't have as much range because I'm limited to like just white, like gray and black. So like when I try to edit the white, like I there aren't as many, like I can't edit it with like as much detail as I would be able to in curves, because like when you look at the curves, like you have this entire like range that you would be able to deal with. So when I'm color editing and I don't quite get like what I want from like the get-go, like I'll often like use like selective color and curves together. But yeah, I think that's about it for, that's actually, let's add some accent colors first. Oops. Yeah, that looks alright. So yeah, I think that's about it for editing things from black and white to color. There's quite a bit that you can do. Now I'm just gonna move on to editing color to color. There we go. So I have this colored girl like prepped beforehand, and her palette is okay, but I feel like it could pop a lot more. And just like quick pro tip, um, like with designing palettes, rather than deciding what colors to use, I find it helps so much more, or like it's so much faster, and it helps so much more if you decide what colors not to use. So like in this case, like the other colors are already chosen, and like and so the quick thing you can do is you can use adjustment layers to limit your palette a bit more. So going back to like the previous adjustments I use, hue saturation layers and gradient maps aren't quite as great um, for editing colors. Like mostly because like if you use them, like you tend to lose the colors underneath. So for example, if I use colorize, then suddenly like everything's like now monochromatic, and then like the only thing I can really do to like bring it back is to like turn like the opacity down, or maybe like change like the blending mode. But like in terms of like being able to like really fine tune the existing colors, my go-tos are like curves and selective color adjustment layers. So like both and either or like all like four that I go through today are fine, but like for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just gonna use curves and selective color to edit this colored image. So starting with whatever works, but I'll just go with selective color. And let's limit this palette. So how about something warmer? So like generally I'll start with editing like the values first, and then with whatever I get, like I'll go into like the hues to like fine tune things where I feel like it needs fine tuning. So let's just go ahead and do it. Talking for a long time is difficult. Okay, let's make her really warm looking. Some cooler blues, or cooler darks, I mean. And whites, let's make the whites. Let's make them cool. Or warm? That looks okay. So you got the selective color layer, and then I kind of want to bring the contrast back into like the darks and lights. So that's where curves would be pretty handy, since they're good for editing value contrast. So let's bring one up. And let's do it in the... Let's do something in the blue channel first. I get that Instagrammy look. Yeah, and that looks okay, I think. So yeah, I think that's about it for adjustment layers and how I color stuff with them. I hope this helps out a bit. I'll be putting up the PSD file for this on Gumroad, and while tips would be super appreciated and would help me out a lot, it's gonna be free. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.